Before we go ahead and get into the spoiler review of The Flash itself, going over all the nitty-gritty details of this movie, I did want to bring up the fact that the film is a huge box office bomb. Originally, it was tracking for a very low $70 million 3-day opening weekend. Well, now, chat, actually before then they said instead of 70, it looks like it's going to be 60. Well, guess what? It was even under 60, only making $55 million during this June weekend, chat. And it's especially embarrassing because it made even less money than Black Adam did when it was released last October. I think Black Adam made around 65 million, chat? 10 million plus more probably. And people are everyone's been asking. Everyone's like, again, it's so crazy with this movie. All these people for months. It feels like we've been talking about this film for months, if not years. I mean, it really has been years, chat. Put it in perspective. This movie was announced 10 years ago. This movie was announced when The Flash, the CW Flash, debuted its first season. And recently, the CW Flash just wrapped it up after 9 seasons, hundreds of episodes. And now we finally got this movie. And so I was like, well, if you spent 10 years working on this film, not even counting the attempts that they made in the 2000s to get Ryan Reynolds to be Wally West, or even the attempts they tried to make a Flash movie in the 1980s, the early 1980s, after the success of Superman and Superman 2, let's just talk about this, chat. The fact that they spent 10 years on this movie, and this is the best that they could do, in my opinion. I as you guys know, I was not a big fan of The Flash. I think it's a movie that a lot of people said, like, oh, it's great, but it has some issues. Like, no, I think this movie is thoroughly mediocre. It's fighting constantly, trying to be a good movie. But it has these occasional bumps where it's like, oh, that was a good moment. We keep going. That was a good moment. But for the most part, I think it's a thoroughly mediocre film for a variety of reasons. But before getting into the spoilers, I did want to talk about why it probably failed. And I think it's a combination of numerous things. Number one, I feel like it's just the quality of the DCU over time. I mean, again, chat, it already started. The DCU, the extended universe, which I hate. Extended, what are you talking about? What do you mean by extended? It doesn't make any goddamn sense. That's one of the first problems, chat. It's a terrible name for a film universe, a film franchise, the DCEU. But it already started a foundation of quicksand with Man of Steel, which I know there's people that like that movie, and there's people that hate movie. I'm very much in the hate division for that specific film on that side. But it already started on quicksand. It was a very far departure from what people often used to seeing with Superman. And it was unsatisfying, I think, for a number of reasons. And then Warner Bros. At the time wanted to catch up to Marvel because of their recent success of all their Marvel movies, and also Avengers was a huge hit. And they're like, well, we want that. We want to do that movie. Let's do that. And so they rushed Batman v Superman, and I think that is literally one of the worst comic movies ever made. Makes Man of Steel look like a masterpiece. And then you just got a mixed bag of films. Like for every Wonder Woman, which was a great movie, right? For every Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, you had for every Shazam, you just had these shitty films. You had 2016 Suicide Squad. You had Aquaman. You had all these movies. And I think after a while, because of the whiplash, because of the lack of quality for so many of these projects, Wonder Woman 1984, another one, I think that affected over time. It did not have a sense of consistency, whereas other film franchises have, whereas the MCU had. People avoided that, after a while. And with the announcement that James Gunn, plus just the Justice League being such a bomb, and that's the other part of it too. A lot of people aren't bringing this up in regards to The Flash. The last time a lot of people, a lot of just regular moviegoers saw Ezra Miller's The Flash was in the theatrical version of Justice League. And that movie came out how many years ago? When that movie came out, was it 2017? It's kind of a while ago now at this point, Chad. It's 6 years, right? Because not everyone that's going to the movies went and saw Zack Snyder's bloated, although slightly better. No one spent, 4.5 hours watching his bloated version of that film and seeing Ezra Miller there. A lot of people's first, impression of Ezra Miller's Flash was in that very disappointing theatrical version of Justice League. And that's kind of what they've held on to, I think, since that time, right? And then you had all those other movies that came out afterwards, and some good and some bad. But then along with that, you had the announcement from James Gunn himself saying like, "Yep, we're starting over," and from Peter Safran and from David Zumbafu, as I like to call him, chat. Yeah, it's like we're gonna be starting over, kinda, maybe not really. We're not really sure. I still don't even know. Like, are we actually doing like a full reboot or not? Like, again, they're always taking these half measures, and so people probably they didn't feel the incentive to like, well, if they're rebooting everything, then what's the point of all these films to begin with? It's not gonna like lead into things, not gonna be connected. It's gonna be just these one-off movies. And the argument is like, well, you should see them anyway, just because they might be good. But clearly, I think at this point, people are just going like, nah, they don't have that mindset. And you just had these failures, either critically or commercial failures over the last several years, or certainly within this year and this past year. Black Adam, huge bomb. Shazam! Fear of the Gods, huge bomb. And now looking like it's The Flash. And so I think that played a factor in announcing you're going to restart kind of everything, asterisks, but you still have all these other movies. You still got to get out there. We still got Blue Beetle. We still got Aquaman 2 on the way. We'll see. And then there's also the situation just of Ezra Miller, being crazy and, like assaulting people, robbing people, burglarizing people, allegedly grooming underage girls and allegedly endangering, toddlers and babies, Chad. It's like, I don't know to what degree that affected, the viewing public. I don't know if everyone is aware of what Ezra Miller was doing, but that probably didn't help at all. And then you just had this weird, I have to say, chat, you just had this bizarre groundswell around this film for the last several months, where you had all these people, I don't know, like celebrities to critics to viewers to influencers are just coming out and we're saying like, this is the greatest comic book movie of all time. It's the best film since The Dark Knight, etc., etc. And for me, like every time I hear something like that, I'm just like, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you when you use that type of hyperbole. It sounds obnoxious. I think that's like a huge turnoff. And then, as we got closer and closer to the actual release and we started hearing things, and then, honestly, then after just seeing the film, Chad, now coming to the part where we actually saw the movie, I'm like, I really don't understand what people will see in this movie at all. Like, if you liked it, that's fine. It's totally cool. But, like, people are saying, like, this is the greatest comic book movie of all time? Or one of the greatest, if not the greatest? And you just have, like, a very sloppy story. You have some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in a theatrically released film since Cats or Gods of Egypt. And a really poorly constructed third act. It's just kind of bizarre to me. I don't get it. And I think it's just, it's happened before. Like back in the day, remember everyone was saying Batman v Superman is the greatest comic movie since The Dark Knight. It got standing ovations. And that was turned out to be all bullshit. And I think it's the same with The Flash. Although I don't think it's as bad as Batman v Superman, but definitely not. But still not very good. But I feel like these are the contributing factors to the lack of success for The Flash, And I just don't think it's going to have a horrible second weekend. I know that like next week, it has like a couple of comedies coming out. Jennifer Lawrence's new movie's coming out, but I don't think it's going to be doing very well. I think it's going to have a drop off of probably 60, 70%, probably going to barely be able to scrape together $20 million, Chap. I think I read today too, they were looking at it and saying like, its projected cum before it leaves theaters is going to be under $400 million, most likely $350 million. This movie allegedly cost between $200 and $220 million. I believe it cost probably $300 million. I really do. Just the constant reshoots. I don't think they're being very honest with the budget. I think this is probably a $250 to a $300 million movie. So this is going to be like one of the biggest box office bomb in the history of the industry, the movie making industry, chap. It's fascinating. And it's the other thing I said, June. That's the thing. June was going to be a bloodbath of the month. You had so many big movies coming out on top of each other. And, like, you're having some other losers right now. It's not just The Flash, chat. Like, the big winner so far of this month has been Spider-Man, which started off. Like, that one's doing well, at least domestically. I think it's already made I think last week it already made what the original did. So, it's doing very well. But, like, Rise of the Beast is underperforming, chat. That's going to be a bomb. Flash going to be a bomb. Elemental is a bomb. You know, Indiana Jones. That's the next one. I'm like, everything I've heard about that film has me deeply concerned. But that's a time for another conversation. But in any case, I believe these are a lot of the factors that contributed to just the Flash's dismal box office. You know, it was everything. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of things. But now we can go ahead and we can get into the spoiler section of this conversation, of this review chat. And I mean, I wanted to talk about like certain scenes, I suppose. I think one of the big things that people are talking about right now, people are freaking out, is, which maybe for the best, for the best reasons, is the opening action sequence. Not great when one of the worst parts of the movie is your opening action sequence. That's kind of frustrating, kind of sad, chat. And that is the opening with the dead-eyed CGI babies and the Flash saving them. During the whole sequence is set up like in Gotham City. The son of Carmine Falcone steals this deadly virus, which apparently is in this hospital. Why they keep in deadly viruses in hospitals, chat? Like, it can literally, if it's released, it'll kill all of Gotham City. That's kind of weird to me. But it opens up with that. Batman's like, I gotta Barry, and he's like, yeah, Batman, I want my sandwich. I did not like the sandwich. By the way, this is like that sandwich it was like a Scooby-Doo Shaggy sandwich. It's like, yes, I want like a peanut butter and jelly, tuna fish, mayo. It's like an abomination sandwich I would make for my subathons. Chad's like, what is this? And I guess he just needs a lot of carbs. He needs a lot of calories, Shag. That's another thing they established. He needs calories. His powers don't work at all. They don't work. Very weird. Any case, he's like, Barry, I need you to go to the Gotham Hospital and make sure the building doesn't fall apart while I chase after Carmine Falcone and destroy the city. And he's like, okay. And the whole opening scene is Barry saving these babies that are just like ejected. They're just straight up yeeted out of this maternity ward. Chat just, woo! And like Barry, he's hopping on stuff. And we just see them kind of like floating down slowly along with one of the nurses or doctors. And, like, you have all these knives coming at this baby's face. You have one baby that's about to be hit in the head with, like, a fucking toaster. One baby's about to have, like, these industrial chemicals spilled on him. I'd say, Barry, don't let that baby be doused in industrial chemicals. It might become a superhero or a supervillain, but whatever. But and then Barry, because he's low on calories, he's like, I can't save the babies. And so he just attacks this vending machine and it very disgustingly begins to stuff his face with everything you can possibly, microwave burritos, Pop-Tarts, like all that shit, buttered noodles, and then he gets all the energy that he needs, and he then proceeds to save the babies. And again, when he's like grabbing and moving things away, and he's putting them on this like gurney, basically, the problem is, it's like, oh, Ram's like, ooh, this looks really weird. Like the babies, like they look like this. They look like this, chat. And it's like they don't look real, like at all. And probably one of the most disturbing things that he does in the sequence is that he puts a baby in the microwave. Like he puts it in there, and it's just like, even when I was watching, I'm like, I don't think babies don't belong in microwaves. I don't think that's gonna work. And you're like, well, he's trying to cushion the blow. I'm like, we shouldn't do that. And then he ends up saving them. And it's so funny though, because when he puts the lady down, the nurse, she's just screaming the entire time, like, because of all the trauma and everything. And she can't believe that she's alive. And then the scene ends with he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And then we hear a ding from the microwave, and he opens up the microwave, and I expected, like, did that baby just get irradiated with microwave energy? It's like, no, thankfully not. It was like, oh, it's a little funny moment, Chad. Like, the baby's done. Here it is. It's like, it's out of the oven, right? And he takes the baby out, and then Ezra Miller starts going, just like horrifying. The baby's like, oh my God. It's so creepy, so scary. Kind of reminded me, funny enough, we did a review for Batman Returns on my one of my shows called Discord Discourse, and there's a scene when the Penguin saves, quote unquote, doesn't really save the baby, it's part of his scheme. He saves the mayor's baby, and he has the baby, and when they're rising up via the rubber duck, he's going like that, very similar to what Ezra Miller does. And then this was actually a great bit here, and it's like, it is both unfortunate and hilarious. just the whole just Ezra Miller just chronology of what's happened since then, because some of the stuff that he says has not aged very well, because he literally says to the woman who he just saved and the baby he put in the microwave, he says, hey, listen, I know that you might have some severe psychological trauma, but I can assure you there will be people on their way to help you. I would offer the services of the Justice League, but we're not very good with dealing with psychological issues. I should know. He literally says that, and he speeds off. I'm like, wow. I was like, holy shit, what a coincidence, Chet. So that's like the first big sequence of the movie that happens, Insane Babies, and it's weird. And it's really weird, and I don't think it really works. Just like, I just don't like the way they show off his powers very much, and how we see certain things. Like, Andy Muschietti's recent excuse, he said, oh, well, the reason why the CGI looks kind of weird to some people is because we're seeing things from the Flash's perspective. And I'm like, he sees us all as lifeless zombie automatons? I don't like that. And that's what these babies look like. Later on in the film, this is after, like, Batman stops the son of Carmine Falcone. He's rescued by Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot shows up. Wonder Woman is in the movie briefly. Like, there's even, like, a joke. It was like, where is she, Bruce? He's like, I don't know. Like, they don't know where Wonder Woman is, and she's always fashionably late, chat, but she saves him. And there's this bit where Bruce has the lasso tied around him, and he's, like, revealing all of his feelings. And he says, like, I have a lot of emotional trauma. And then Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, she leaves. Not the last time we're ever going to see her as that character. But she goes, and then, Barry and, Bruce, they're like hang out and talk and stuff. That's pretty much that whole sequence. The other big reveal in the movie, chat. So there's not really like a main villain in this film. Like I would ask people a question like, who do you think is the main villain in the movie? And I think people would have different answers. Some would probably say Michael Shannon Zod, but the real answer, to be honest with you, chat, is it's Ezra Miller. It was Barry. It was me, Barry. It was Barry the whole time. Blackstone, thank you for the very generous 700 biddies. Grimace German. Everyone is well. I'm doing very well, Blackstone. Good to have you here. Thank you for your very generous donation. Just talking about the big spoilers in the movie. But yeah, the reveal is, so at one point in the film, Barry discovers that by going very fast, he can access time travel, and he's able to go back and forward and stuff. And at one point, when he tries to basically save his mom, that's the whole premise of the movie. I want to save my mom. I have to move this one thing to a certain location. Like, it's this can of tomatoes. If this one person just knew where the tomatoes were, then my dad wouldn't have been blamed for the murder, etc., whatever. Any case, he's going back, chat, and he's seeing it all play out. But then suddenly this crusty guy, like this crusty speedster comes out of nowhere and goes, bah! Just pushes Barry and pushes him into like 2013, into the time when like Man of Steel is just about to happen, like the main events of that movie. And it's like, who is that guy? It's Barry. He's the crusty guy. I think he's like supposed to be this movie's version of Savitar, which is like an evil version of Barry Allen from like the comics. And it was adapted, I believe, in the CW Flash series. I'm not too familiar with how they handle that storyline, but that's who he is. And so that Barry who pushed him is we're introduced to later, a younger version of Barry. It was the 18-year-old Barry because, you have 20-something Barry now has to teach 18-year-old Barry to not be an idiot and to use his Flash abilities and his powers, because part of the movie, Barry loses his powers. He can't use them anymore. And so only 18-year-old idiot Barry is able to use them. But then later on in the movie, chat, when we finally introduced to Supergirl and Batman, and I think they don't really do a lot with them. I mean, it's great to see Michael Keaton come back. One of my big criticisms, though, of him being featured in the film is like they don't go into the history of like what happened to him. Like that was really frustrating to me. It's like, what happened between that 30-year gap between Batman Returns and now? Right? Because it's been like 31 years, and there's like no explanation. Like he lives as a fucking hobo in his mansion. He makes pasta all the time. That's really all he does now. And I'm thinking, like, okay, let's explain, like, what we don't go to his version of Gotham. We don't see that. If they, again, this might not even be that Batman. I think it's a variant of that Batman. It's not the Tim Burton Batman, chat. I don't think it is. I think it's just a variant of that Batman who is like, I retired. It was great. But we never really spend a lot of time like learning about his history, what happened to him, what caused him to become this way. That's not explained. He just explains time travel and multiverse through cooked and uncooked pasta. And he's like, all right, I'll help you find this Superman. And that's what they do. So and then they find Supergirl, and they do nothing with Supergirl. Everyone that was excited for Sasha Calle, I'm not familiar with her as an actress like at all. I don't know what she's been in. They do nothing with her. Like, she's just in the movie, and she fights Zod, and that's about it. That's what they do with her. That's really it. But we get to the third act of the movie, and Batman, Supergirl, spoiler, they keep dying over and over again. They keep dying. Like, the first time Batman dies, he crashes into Zod's ship and just whiffs it. It has no effect. He's like, I'm going in, Barry. He just comes right into the ship and ba-boom! And nothing. He just dies. And Barry's like, no! And then Sasha Calle, she gets stabbed in the boob. And when she gets stabbed, as we know, Chad, when you get stabbed in the booba, insta-death. And like the, I guess, I forget, what's the fucking thing that's inside of her head? Whatever. Zod wants to take out all of her juice so he can restart Kryptonian civilization, right? The same thing he did to, like, Clark and Man of Steel. I will say, though, there was a cool moment between her and Zod. Like, again, another actor who I think is just wasted in the movie is Michael Shannon. He even came out and said, I just did not like making this movie. And I believe him, because he doesn't look like he was having fun at all. He's literally just repeating the same dialogue. He says he's in a CGI suit, and most of the time he's just fighting. And he just looks so sad in this movie. But because Kara Zor-El, because in this version, this variant of this timeline, she went with Clark when, his rocket, but they got separated somehow. And apparently Zod found, baby Kal-El, and that's why we see that moment in the trailer. She's like, what did you do? Like, she's talking to Zod, and he said, we killed the baby. They killed him. Well, but then that sets her up, which I kind of like that. I really actually like that moment when she's like, fuck you, and then she, goes at him. I thought that was good. That was my favorite Supergirl scene in the movie, because it's like, that's righteous anger. But then he stabs in the boob, and then she's dead. But then 18-year-old Barry's like, no, we can reverse this, right? We can do the time travel thing again. And so as he keeps doing the time travel thing, like, he keeps getting, like, mutated and shit, and, like, he gets, like, stuff, like, debris stuck in his body. It's, like, really gross. It's like, oh, goddamn, that's rough. And so then he resets it, and at one point, I mean, the same thing happens to Supergirl. He creates, like, a tornado, but then she's like, yeah, cool, I can hit Zod. But then Zod just fucking, like, no, he grabs her, and he stabs her in the boob again. She dies. Now, how Batman dies for the second time is actually, like, really fucking badass. I have to admit. This is a nice send-off, just like a cool death for Keaton's Batman. And it's what we saw in the trailer. So at one point when Batman's using the Batwing which I like how the Batwing actually works. It's like this spinning gyro. Like, the cockpit's always stationary, but the rest of the plane is always moving, so you don't get whiplash when you're moving around. I think, it's pretty cool. But we see in the trailers he's taking out all the Kryptonian ships and stuff. But at one point I forget what I don't know if that version of that character has a name in Man of Steel, but he's the Kryptonian giant. I always call him Non. In any case, the giant attacks his ship. The Batwing, and he has to eject. He's got to get out of there. He crashes on the ground, and then Michael Keaton's Batman fights the giant, and it's actually, like, really cool. Again, I really love how Batman moves in this movie. Like, he basically, like, grapples onto him. He's constantly moving around him and putting bombs on him, and he explodes, and it's just causing more lacerations. And, like, just parts of Non's body, the giant's body, just to be blasted off. And, like, it's like really cool. But then he fucking grabs Batman and slams him on the ground and just clearly causes significant brain damage and just bashes his skull in. But it was a really cool way to have him die. And, like, at one point, the regular Barry Allen, the regular Flash, he's with Bruce. And he's like, Bruce, no. You gotta get up. You gotta come back. Don't go. And he's like, it's okay, kid. You did bring me back. Ugh, and he dies. And that's how he dies the second. Which I actually like that. I like that. He's like, you did bring me back. I am back. Thank you. And he dies. And he's like, you got to be Batman one last time. And I liked how they handled that personally. But anyway, young Barry's like, fuck that. We're still trying to fix this over and over and over and over and over again. It's just not working. And then that's finally when they access, I don't know the Speed Force multi-dimensional timey-wimey mumbo-jumbo nexus. And This is when we get the reveal that the crusty guy is the younger version of Barry, who's been doing this for who knows how long. He's now like a super old man. He's like, Barry, it was me. I finally found a way to fix it, I think. And you're like, what? And apparently it would take like the sacrifice of all these different worlds that are part of the DC multiverse. And this is where we start to see like just some of the apps. I mean, it's already been a lot of bad CGI. This is where we see like a ton of horrible CGI. We see one world where it's Christopher Reeve and the actress who played Supergirl, and they like come in and just like kind of these lifeless automatons, like they're looking at everything and nothing at the same time. It's just like, you don't look real. Like you see them and like their world is colliding with the other world of George Reeves, who played Superman, like in the original serials and stuff, which is kind of weird they brought him back because of just, you know, the whole history with that actor and how literally it destroyed his life. But anyway, and that world's colliding and like they're destroying. We see Adam West for a second at one point. I think one of the big ones that people have been talking about, like we see the Superman Lives. So Tim Burton attempted to make a Superman film in the 90s with Nicolas Cage, and it's kind of like this infamy. Actually, there's a great documentary about it, chat, by John Schnepp. Really good. Late, great John Schnepp. And a wonderful documentary about just the history of that film. Everyone who was involved, from Tim Burton to John Peters to Kevin Smith. Really interesting. But they have a whole CGI sequence where we see Nicolas Cage fighting the spider, or the Thanagarian snare beast, as it was called in the script. And he looks fucking horrifying. And he's just, I would show you what he looks like, but I don't want to give a copyright. But he just looks like the whole time. It's like, you don't look real. He's just super rubbery, super CGI. Again, just dead, lifeless eyes, chat. That's what all these CGI cameos look like. I'm trying to think, is there like anyone else that they show? I don't even know. They might show other people, but honestly, it's just, once we're in that weird Nexus, timey-wimey, mumbo-jumbo world, it's like no one looks real. They all look like The Rock from The Mummy Returns. They look like CGI Scorpion King. Like everyone. It's not hyperbolic. I'm not being hyperbolic, Chad. It's like they all look like that. You know, either from like other characters in the movies that we see. It's like, why is it? Like we see events from the past DC films. Like we see, there's a really awful shot of Henry Cavill where he's just like this. He's like all kind of weird and like rubbery. It's just terrible. Any case, Krusty Barry then is like, I gotta kill you, Barry. I gotta kill you. And so Krusty Barry tries to kill regular Barry, but then young Barry throws himself, oh no, in front of regular Barry, and Krusty Barry stabs young Barry. But since young Barry is technically Krusty Barry, then Krusty Barry dies because young Barry dies. That's what happens, Shay. It's like, oh, you gotta do it. And so you gotta go back and basically undo what you did in the beginning of the movie, which the whole thing was Barry's mom, which I actually like all the stuff with Barry's parents. Ron Livingston, the actress who played Nora Allen, they're some of the best parts of this movie, some of the most human parts of this movie. Very wholesome, great scenes. I even like this ending scene here, where the thing that happens is Barry's mom forgot this can of tomatoes to make this pasta. And Ron Livingston, Mr. Allen, he goes to the grocery store to pick it up. And then the whole situation happens where he's blamed for the murder, right? Anyway, so Barry wants to make sure that, like, his dad, like, never goes to the grocery store. So he put the tomatoes in his mom's cart so she wouldn't forget them, right? Well, so now he's got to undo all that. So he goes to the grocery store, takes the tomatoes out until Buddy has, like, one last moment with his mom, which is actually handled pretty well. I actually really, really like that. You know, the actress, I forget her name, she did a great job. And, you know, then he goes back, you know, and everything seems normal again. He did switch one thing. So early in the movie, Ben Affleck's Batman gave him some footage from years ago when his dad was in the grocery store, where it showed evidence to legitimize his alibi. It's like, oh, no, I was at the grocery store, and so I couldn't have murdered my wife, right? The problem was in the footage, he never looks up at the camera, so you never see his face. He was like, oh, he could be wearing similar clothes, but we don't know if that's him. We don't see his face. And so what Barry ends up doing is he still changes the past though, because I think he puts the tomatoes in a different place, or he fixes the camera in a way, and so when his dad does look up, you see his face, and so when they're at his hearing, so he can possibly be released from jail and get parole. It's then revealed like, oh, there it is. So technically, he still didn't really learn his fucking lesson. Because he's still affected, the past, though. It's like, but what? And then that sets up probably what happens at the end of the movie, where Bruce Wayne, where Batman calls Barry, is like, oh, congratulations, Barry, so happy for you. Here, I'm just about to meet you. And so then Barry waits for Bruce Wayne, but then this guy's walking up to him. He's like, who are you? He's like, Barry, come on. And it's George Clooney. It's George Clooney, chap, from, Batman and Robin. He's like, you're not Bruce, you're not Batman. And then George Clooney does that thing. He does the head bob from Batman and Robin. Like, huh, come on, it's me. He does the head bob again. I was like, oh my God, it is. And so, and then one point his tooth falls out, because at one point in the movie his tooth fell out. And he's like, it's funny. But that's it. That's like all the spoilers, honestly. Like I'm telling you, there's not a lot of big stuff in this movie to spoil. I mean, outside of like the CGI cameos, which again, I don't think they're very good at all. I was like, I guess these are spoilers if you care. Maybe if they were done. Well, the thing is, like, when these cameos show up, they're just standing there looking at Barry, just like, hey, how you doing? I gotta go. And that's all they do. It's like, dude, it would have been cool if fucking, they wouldn't be able to do it. But it's like, if Christopher Reeve Superman joins the battle, if Nicolas Cage's Superman joins the battle, if this version of Batman or this version of the Flash, like, let's do that. Like, none of these characters, they're just there to look at you, just going, oh, but it's that dead-eyed, soul-sucking, soulless look. That's all they are. It's like, these are like really shitty Easter eggs. And they do a lot of Easter eggs in the movie. Like, the only scene in, when we're in the Michael Keaton Batman verse or whatever, I don't even know what you want to call it. But when we're in his Batcave, like, the only hint at his past is they find young Barry finds the Joker's laughing bag. Remember at the end of the movie when the Joker dies and we hear that ha 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 ha? He finds that. Bruce kept that. That's it. But that's the kind of stuff that's in the movie. I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Also, you can tell they did a lot of there's a ton of reshoots, because originally this movie was supposed to end with Michael Keaton as the new DC Universe Batman Bruce Wayne. Because I was like, when is this scene going to happen? Because you look in still images and you see Bruce in like this blue shirt and this blue coat and this like white gray shirt or whatever. And I realized like, oh shit. They reshot this with George Clooney, because George Clooney is in that exact suit. And so they just got rid of that because they changed all the plans. Because originally, that was going to be the Batman. That's why he was going to be in Batgirl. He already shot all that footage. And so that's what it was going to be for the time being. But now with James Gunn taking over and Peter Safran taking over, that's all done. That's scrapped. And so Michael Keaton's performance is just a one-off, if you will. And so they completely changed that. Honestly, it's just, again, that's what's so crazy to me, that this movie was being lauded by so many people saying it's the greatest comic movie. I think it's a mess. In terms of multiverse, listen, we've been getting a lot of multiverse movies, superhero movies, and some good, some bad. And I think this is by far the worst one out of all the ones that have dealt with the multiverse concept, because they deal with it in such a lazy, trite way. I was very, very, very unimpressed by how they handled all these cameos, and how they delved into the multiverse, how they represented it. It looks shitty, consistently. Not like, that one shot was bad. No, every time they access the multiverse stuff, it always looks bad. Even like how they present them, they're like in these. So when you see Christopher Reeve and when you see George Reeve or when you see Nicolas Cage, they're kind of like in these giant globes, but it's like the globes are wrapped with film footage. Like, that's what it looks like. Literally film footage is wrapped around these giant globes, and we're like watching it like it's like a film reel going by, like it's clipping by. And it's just like, that's a really weird way to represent this. And it just doesn't work, and they're just kind of staring at you the whole time. That's it. That's literally it. So yeah, that's the Flash spoiler review, chat. Like, even talking about it now makes me dislike it even more. There's not a lot of interesting things in this movie. It doesn't set up anything that's really interesting. It doesn't present something that's really interesting. You know, outside of some really wholesome moments, honestly, between like, again, Ezra Miller's performance for the most part is good. It's probably the best that they have been. You know, I feel like sometimes he's a little extra. They are a little extra. You know, when it's young Bear, it's like, all right, this is a little too much. But for the most part, Ezra Miller is pretty solid in the movie. And then I like Michael Keaton. I thought they could do more with him. Nothing his fault in the movie. He's great. I would have liked more with him, honestly. Sasha Calle's she's just there. They do nothing with that girl at all. You know, Michael Shannon, he's like, I hate it here. It's like, I believe you, Michael. And I like Ron Livingston, the actress who played Nora Allen. I thought they're honestly probably my favorite characters in the movie. They felt real to me. Like, you're not CGI, you're real. I mean, we do see creepy, dead-eyed CGI versions of them when we're in the Speed Force, timey-wimey, Nexus mumbo-jumbo world. But when they're just being people, then they're great. They're great. So, but yeah, other than that, it's just, I think it's a disappointment. I think it's a really thoroughly mediocre movie. It is a mediocre movie with a handful of good moments. It is not in no way, in my opinion, great. I mean, I can't say that. Couldn't say that. I gotta be honest with you, chat. I gotta be honest with you. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.